So yeah, as part of day 9, we have discussed like what are the most frequently used activities. So today we will be seeing in detail we are covering two practicals in which we'll be using this get metadata activity, filter activity, of course a copy activity, and for each activity. Okay. So I request all you guys to just prepare these all activities. Keep in mind like what are the basic definitions of this stuff. So yeah, uh, yeah. So coming to our first use case. So what we did actually yesterday, we have just moved one file from blob to Azure Data Lake storage. But if in case we have many files, so for moving many files from blob to the Azure Data Lake storage, will we create many pipelines for doing the same task? So is it a good advisable solution to create several pipelines for doing several copy activities?
No.
No,
Yeah. So what is happening here? We are repeatedly performing the same task. So whenever you want to repeatedly perform the same task, so what do you use in programming? What kind of concept you use in programming? If you want to perform a task repeatedly, the same task repeatedly, what is the thing you use?
update, update,
Loop.
update.
Yeah.
Code.
So this is a concept which you use to perform your. Someone can. Who is this?
Loop.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So loop is the concept when you want to perform a similar task many times in the same way. You make use of a concept called loop. So what this loop does, it repeatedly does the same thing. So the same concept can be implemented in Azure Data Factory using two loops. In Azure Data Factory we have two kind of loops. One is for and other is until. So as we discussed yesterday, when you know how many iterations, when you're sure about the number of iterations and how many times you want to loop that flow, then you can go for the for loop. So when to choose for loop? If you are sure about the number of it, if you know the number of iterations. And coming to until. So when to use until loop? So you will use this until loop when you're not aware of how many iterations. So in until, when you use this until activity, you will be giving a condition. So whenever that condition becomes true, whenever that condition fails, then the loop stops. So when you're not aware of number of iterations, and so in until you will be giving a condition. So based on condition, the loop will continue. So if condition turns out to be false, the loop will stop. If the condition is true, it will run until and unless it reaches a condition where it turns out to be false. The loop will execute continuously. So here our first thing is our first use cases. So I have told you, since I want to move, you want to move many files. When you want to move many files from one source to other destination, you will be using this for each loop. So that is our first use case. So we want to move many files from blob to ADLS. So yeah, you want to move files from blob to ADLS. So what is the source and what is the destination here? What is your source and what is your destination?
uh,
Yeah, source is
source,
blab and the destination will
blob,
be ADLS.
and
But what is the meaning of
ADLS stands for Azure Data
blab?
Lake Storage. Yeah. So you are moving files from blob to ADLS. So how many files we are having? We are having many files here. So I want to move all these files. So do I need to create many copy activities? Is it a feasible solution to create one copy activity which copies file one from blob to Azure Data Lake, and the second copy activity I mean a second pipeline which consists of a copy activity which moves a file to from blob to Azure Data Lake? So that is not a feasible solution. So here what we are doing, we are doing a same task. What is that task? We are moving all these files from blob to Azure Data Lake storage. Since it is a repeated task, you are processing the processing which is required to move a file from blob to Azure Data Lake. The process is same, but you're doing it multiple times. So same process you want to do it multiple times, and also you are aware of, so how many times to loop. So since we are doing the same process again and again, we will choose the concept of loop. Now here, what shall we choose? Do we need to choose this for loop or until loop? We are aware
if we
of
know
how
the
many
number of files,
are
then we
here.
until
Yeah, yes. Since we know here we are having only three files, so we can choose a for loop. So the activity first one is, so yeah, before that you will be having one more thing. So yeah, so first thing is what is, now okay, let me show you in practical about that. So here you will be using for loop, and which is the activity which copies the data from source to destination? It is the copy activity. So these are just the basics required. So what we'll do is we'll move all the files present in blob storage in a container to the Azure Data Lake storage. Now let's move to the practical thing. Can Satish mute yourself if you don't have any doubts, and Ranganathan, yeah, even you. Ravi, you also. Satish, can you mute yourself? So I'll mute you. Okay. I have muted you. No worries.
Sir, I have a doubt. 1 minute.
Yeah, 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 Satish.
See, we are using a for loop to copy all these files, right? So
Yes.
like, there is a other way. We will use a single pipeline, and
Hmm.
we can call the pipeline repeatedly, right? That is also fine, right?
You will call the pipeline repeatedly, but then inside that you should change the path, no? So inside the data set, first time when you create a pipeline, your data set will be referring to one file, file one. Next
Okay.
time, again you should change that. You should go into that pipeline and change the file name. That is in the data set, you will be doing the change. You will point
Oh,
the data set to the file 2.
okay.
Again, third time when you run, you should again edit that data set and you should change the file name to be data 3. So here also it is a repeated task. So you don't want to do a repeated task, no?
Okay,
You
that
want to
is fine.
automate.
Okay.
Yes.
And
So
can
that
we
is,
Suppose
not mention the full file name instead of full file name, partial file name we can't mention?
yeah. Why do you want to mention the partial file
So
name? How will
if you know the file pattern, so you no need
yeah,
to
yeah,
mention
yeah.
the full.
Yes.
So
So
in
that is
that
also
time, yeah, in that time
hmm.
we no need to change the that data set, right? It's like it will take the file, like it will check the pattern. If the
Yeah. In
pattern
that
is
case,
satisfied,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you can also do like that. You can just in the copy activity you can give the pattern and yes.
we can run multiple times that pipeline so that it will copy. Okay. Yeah,
You
it
need
is
not
more or less.
if you give
Yeah.
a pattern. So all the file names which are matching that pattern, they will run now.
Yes.
same file we cannot use in this loop. If same file. Means we suppose if we have file one, we want to override this file one. So what is the we can how to use override option is in there or not?
Yeah, yeah. We'll discuss them. See, let's start the practical. Then yeah, you'll come to know. Park your questions. In the meanwhile, let's start our practical.
Srishna, one thing.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday, the portal is not working for some person like me. So please explain the same practical, including the basics also, no? Like yesterday things also.
Yesterday, what was not working?
Actually, yesterday portal is not working for us now. For me, portal is not working. That's why I
You
didn't
can
attend
just
that.
go.
So can you explain?
Oh, you
Yeah,
can
this
go
I
through
will
the
go.
video. Same thing. The see, anyways, even if you don't go there, yesterday we have covered just a basic thing, a copy activity. That also in today's
Okay,
use case also you will be covering that. The same thing will be
sure.
covered today also. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
hello. Sir,
But of today's
myself also studying art content.
what money?
Yeah, yesterday also I am not able to connect yesterday class.
Yeah, actually, yesterday it's showing error for multiple persons. That's
Okay, anyways, that will be covered today also. Yesterday's class will be a sub part of today's class. So
Okay,
you
sure.
need not worry. Once you listen to today's class, you will come to know. Anyways, we'll be creating everything from basics now. So yeah, the thing will be covered, and you can also go back and look to the yesterday's video also. So you'll get
Oh,
clarity.
okay, sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
sure.
I have a question. Suppose
Guys,
means
guys,
a duplicate
Gaurav,
file.
yeah, we will take that question. Um,
Okay, okay.
Once we complete the practical, yeah, I'll show you in practical like what happens if you repeatedly put the same file if it gets override or what. Let me start the practical. Yeah. So yeah. So based on our use case, what are all the resources we need today? Our use case is to move the data from all the files present in the blob storage to the Azure Data Lake storage. So what are all the required resources for us now? So what is the first resource which we need?
Azure Data Factory.
Yeah, next. What are all the resources required?
And
Might be blob storage, data lake.
Yeah,
blob blob.
yes. And resource groups is also a resource. It's a service provided by Microsoft, that is Azure. So resource group is also a service. Someone have unmuted. You have any doubts? If not, just mute yourselves, guys. So the first thing, we need the storage accounts and data factory. So data factory, create data factory. So yesterday's class, whoever have missed, this is what we have covered. So you can, get to know about that today. Resource group, we have already created a resource group. So that's what we are selecting here. And name. So here in the meanwhile, we will create the storage accounts also. So our source, it's the blob storage we need to create now. So resource group, it is the one which we have created, and the storage account name. So whenever you want to create an Azure data lake storage, then you need to check this checkbox. So this is what it differ. It makes the blob different from the Azure data lake storage.
Hello.
Yeah.
Quick question. Is this storage contains the one which you mentioned, the hot or the cold ones or something?
Yeah, yeah. I'll show. You mean the tires?
Yeah.
We have this.
So,
Yes. See, it's the access tires hot.
okay. And how do we create the cold one?
The same. Let me show you. Once this blob gets created, then I'll show you like how can you change the tires. We have also discussed that during that class. And the other one is ADLS. So here, since we are creating the data lake storage, we should come under the advanced. You'll be finding this enable the hierarchical namespace. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have this blob got created. You can go to resource, and data factory also got created. You can go to the resource. See containers in our so let's create a container in the blob storage. So this is our source container. So here is where you can see the access tire.
Mhm.
Uh, Let me upload and then show you how to change the tires.
So, in general, you are uploading the file itself directly in this. It's a
Yes.
blob storage. How
Yeah,
about
I'm uploading.
uploading this? How about
One second.
uploading this?
What?
How about uploading this into a table or
Yeah, that's the other scenarios. We'll be covering those scenarios. Today we are covering two scenarios. Yeah. So here you have asked me about access tier, no? So by
Mhm,
default, when you move something to a blob storage, by default it will choose it to be a hot tier.
mhm.
So if at all you want to change the tire of this, you can. So once you click on this file, you'll be having an option here, that is change tire. You can click on change tire. Yeah. So here you can select. If you
But
want to move
as
this
mhm.
file from hot to cold, you can select here and save it. Yeah.
And by default, the container or the storage account is hot.
Yes.
We can't change that bit to cold, can we? Only the data we can change it to the cold.
Yeah. Uh, Regarding them, you won't be access to do all those. The administrator will take care of all those as a data engineer. So these things also they'll be only telling like what are the files you require them. I mean, an architect will guide you to keep what files to keep on which tire. So if at all you want to change the tire of a file, this is how you do.
Mhm. But not the container.
Containers can't. One second.
Mhm.
So where is this blob storage? So here you can, this is the access level. So see here you have a change tire. Even you can change the tire of this also. I think it's related to a file. Mm,
When you go to the
you're
home
asking
and
to change, can we change the tire of a container?
yeah,
See,
why?
container
Because
themselves,
the
they don't have any. See here, you see this is source is a container.
yeah,
So here, so where there is nothing tire which is related to a container. The only tires which you have are, so you'll be having tires for these the blobs which you create.
the other screen which you were showing it,
That
the
is, yeah, that is the settings which is related. It is asking like so the default thing. It is showing us that whenever you create a blob, do you want by default it to be in hot tire? So that is what the setting which you saw there.
yeah. So can't we change that to the cold?
Yeah, yeah. But that is that should be done. See, in the configuration you will be able to see, not in the configuration, in the overview. See, the default access set, this is what you have seen.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Why? Because this, when it is hot, it is costing the money, isn't it?
Yeah. See, yes.
Mm.
You can click on
So
it
we
and you
can
can
change
change it to code.
cold. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So everything, it's all about exploring. How much you explore, that much knowledge you'll be getting on it. So it's just like an app. You can just explore the things. Yeah. So coming to our use case. So first, let's start our use case. Data factory is ready for us, and we have also in the source we have just created the oh yeah, we have two files in our source container, that is in the blob storage. Now we are opening our Azure Data Factory. So yeah, so we are ready with all the things which are required.
Linked service and data.
Yeah, you can come to this author icon, and now the first thing at the higher level we need to create a pipeline. So what are we doing? We are moving the data from blob to Azure Data Lake storage. So before moving, so first of all, we need to know like what are all the files which are available in this container, in this source container, what are all the files which are available. So linked service, what will this linked service do? It will just establish the connection. But after you create a data set, you will be pointing to the source container. But inside the source container, how many files are you having? So you should be able to get the information regarding the files present inside the source folder, I mean the source container. So in order to get that information, what is that information in technical terms? It is the metadata. So you want to capture the metadata regarding this source container. So how you will capture the metadata? We have an activity which gives us the metadata. What is that activity? Did anyone of you remember? We have discussed in yesterday's class. So, which is the activity which gives us the metadata?
Get metadata.
Name itself,
Yes.
I think. Name itself says the activity name.
No, no. Yeah. So, get metadata is the activity. Okay. So, first, here, we just want to know what are all the files which are present inside the source container. So, first, we need to able to, first, the thing we need to do is we need to establish a connection between our activity, that is get metadata activity, should be able to access this blob storage. So how will you establish the connection? Using what?
Linked service.
Yeah. So after the linked service you will be having the data set here. So data set, we will be creating everything on fly. So first, so we are coming in a reverse manner. First we are creating a data set. So our data set should point to what? It should point to the source container. So our source is blob storage. Select the blob storage. And what kind of files are present in our source? All of them are CSV files. So we can select the CSV file and click on continue. And then the linked service. So we are creating this linked service also on fly. So here, subscription, free trial. So An account can have how many subscriptions? How many number of subscriptions an account can have? Is it only one or any number of subscriptions?
Subscription
Any
could
number of
be
one.
one.
Yeah. An account can have any number of subscriptions. But a single subscription cannot be shared to multiple accounts. A subscription is only related to only a single account. So, what is our storage account name? It is date and blob storage. So, test connection. So, if at all you need to check this one also, basically it will automatically does a test connection for us. But if in case you find any error, it will be showing you a cross mark here. You can check again regarding that. Click on create. Now our linked service is getting created. So now linked service got created. But here we need to create a data set which points to the source container. So here you should browse for the container. This is the container. Okay. So this is the source container. So if you click on that source container only, see, if you click here, it will just create the source. That's it. If you want to go inside that container, you know you should hover this word, so it should get underlined. Then only it will open the remaining things which are present under that container. So as of now we are not going to select any files because we don't want to send only a single file. We want to send all the files. So we will be our data set will only point to the source container. That's it. Why are we giving the path only till source container? Because we want to get the metadata related to the source container. So now we have established the connection, and our data set is also pointing to what? Our data set is pointing to what?
Container.
Which container?
Source.
Source content.
Yeah. So now in get metadata, we will be having something called as field list. This is also an interview question. So here, they'll ask you like what are the arguments you will find under the field list. So the arguments which you find under this field list are dynamic arguments. So since our data set is pointing to a container, so whatever metadata is related to a container. So what is the metadata related to our container? Lost modified date, and so what are all the metadata related to a container will be shown here. So you need to click on a new, then you will find the metadata here. See, these are all the metadata related to the container. Child items. So when you click on child items, it will return you all the items present inside our container. So in our case, how many items will it return?
Two.
So if you click on child items, how many will it
Two.
return? It will return
Two.
2. Yeah. So exists. So what does this exist tell us? Whether our file is existing or not. If you want to know whether a file exists or not, then you should use this. And item name. If you want to return the item name, then you use this. And item type. So here, what is the item name? Our data set is pointing to the source container. So what is the item name? The item name will be source. And what is the item type? Source is of what type? Is it a file or is it a container? Source is of what type?
Container.
Container.
So when you choose this item type, it will be giving you the container. And coming to the last modified date, So this is what it returns. Yeah. So as per our requirement, we just want to get the metadata related to the container, that is the source container. So we want to get what are all the items present inside that source container. So to get all the items present inside that source container, we will use the child items. Okay, guys, please, I have explained you this, no, these things, remember these all. They'll ask you like what are all the arguments you have under a field list, then you should able to say those are child items, exist, name, item type, and last modified. So for a file also, for a file you won't have this child items. The other ones will be same, whether a file is existing or not, item type, item name, last modified. So here child items. If we validate and let's check like what this get metadata activity is returning now. So whenever you do something, you make sure you validate it. And then, so now what are we doing? We are not publishing. So before publishing, if you want to run anything, then you use this option of debug. So if I debug, this will run, and let's see the output of get metadata. So here, this is the symbol, it's running. So yeah, so the symbol has changed, that means it got completed. So what is, so here if you want to see, if you hover on this activity, these are the inputs which the activity is getting. So we have seen that see the field list, we have selected the child items as our field list. And coming to the output, what all it is returning, it is returning the child items. See, we are having a csv file, that is name, type, it's a file name, this is the name of the file, and type, since it's a file, the type is file. And you should, the other thing you need to observe is, so all these child items are returned to us in the form of an array. So inside the array, you are having the data in JSON format, key value pairs. So the thing you need to remember is the output that the child items is returning is in the form of an array. So we can copy it and tell you in detail. So here, this is the output which we got from the get metadata activity. So everything will be in the form of a JSON. So whatever you do, whatever you create in the Azure Data Factory, in the back end, a JSON script gets created for it. So those are called as ARM templates. So these ARM templates are used to deploy our pipelines from one environment to other environment. So whatever you do in ADF using interface, at the back end, a JSON script gets created for it. So in the same way, this is the output which got created from our get metadata. So get metadata is giving us this output. So what is that output? This is what you need to concentrate on, the child items. So here it has written as an array. So in for loop, So these are the ones we need to iterate through. So we need to iterate an array. So whenever you iterate through this array, what will it return at first? This will be returned in the first iteration. So in the iteration 1, what gets returned? This entire thing gets returned. So in the first iteration, this entire, so in the iteration 1, this gets written. In iteration 2, you will be getting this entire thing. But so what is our requirement here? In the for loop, we only need the files. We do not need this type. So in order to access only name, what we will do is, let's do in practical. So we have created a get metadata activity which is giving the metadata regarding a container. So which is the activity which we use next? So it is returning all the files. So next
For
activity
each,
is
for each,
query activity.
for each.
So you can just again search your activities here also and put here. So on successful completion of this activity only, I want this activity to run. So that is the reason I will connect these activities through a on success. So first thing here is, yeah, once you click on the for each activity, this is the setting. So you want to execute all of the files or all of the things sequential, that is one after one, or you want to execute all of them in a batch? So here you can give those. If you want to execute anything in a batch, you can give here. If you want to execute them sequentially, that is one after the other, you can check this box. So I want to execute them sequentially. After one files get successfully moved to Azure Data Lake storage, then I want to start the processing of other file. So here we need to supply what are the items that this for each should process. So you should click on this dynamic content, add dynamic content, and you should get the output of get metadata. So what does this get metadata return? We have seen in the notepad. It is returning us the child items, a property called as child items. So I'll just copy that name and here output dot child item. So once you keep a dot, it will show you like what all you can use there. Child items, and yeah, that's it. So now what you need to do, you need to put a copy activity which copies the data. So inside this for loop here, you should click on this configuration. So now inside the for loop, for each loop, we are creating a copy data activity. So here, what is our source? It is the blob storage, and these are CSV files and a linked service which we have already created. We can reuse those linked services. Once you create any linked service or a data set, You can reuse them in any pipelines, any number of pipelines. So here we would like to point to this source container. That's it. And import schema, I don't like to import schema. Okay. So yeah. So now I will choose this wildcard file path. So what do you mean by this wildcard? Whenever it matches a pattern, then it will choose those files. So in this, I'll be adding a dynamic content. Here, I would like to refer to the current item. So here, you will directly get this current item. And whenever you see a current item, but let me share you this. So if you see this, so see, this is getting returned to us in the first iteration, but we do not need this type. We just need the name. So how will you use it? So this entire thing is being referred to as an item. So this entire thing present inside the curly bracket is referred to an item. But here we just need the name of that item. So how to access that is item dot name. How will we access in our JSON? The same way, item dot name, since we want to use only the name. So the same thing you will be giving here. Yeah. So item dot name, since I want to access the file name. Then you click on OK. So what happens? Each file name gets inserted here. So we have configured our source. Now we should configure our sink. So we want our sink to be the Azure Data Lake storage, and we are storing the CSV files and the linked service. We have not created anything for the Azure Data Lake storage. So our subscription is a free tier, and the storage account name is Azure Data Lake Storage Dayton. It has automatically tested the connection. We are creating this. So here, so whenever there is an option for you, so here we have not selected any so by default in the Azure Data Lake storage, we do not have any container. So if you do not have any container and you want to create it, you can directly create it on the fly. So directly, if I see here, I don't have any container. So I can directly create a container here. Sync. And since it's an Azure Data Lake storage, I can create a subdirectory here. So here all your files will be coming and storing in the subdirectory. So I don't want to import any schema. So we have configured everything. So you can just click on validate. Everything is good to go. You can validate again the entire pipeline. So it's been successfully validated. So what are we having at the top level? We are having a get metadata activity, which gives us the metadata regarding that container, and all that metadata is being passed. So metadata in our case is the file names. So all these file names are being passed to this for each loop. So this for each loop at each iteration will be sending each file name to this copy data activity, and this copy data activity will moving the data from the blob storage to the Azure Data Lake storage. Now let's debug our pipeline. So see our get metadata, this activity got executed. So the field list is child items, which is an input. And the output, what output it has written? It has written as the child items. What are all the items present inside that container? Since we have two files, it has written all the information regarding the two files. And see the for each, what is this for each returning? So it's returning the item count. So since we have two files, the item count is 2. Since we have have configured in for each activity that we want those activities to be executed sequentially, so one after the other. So other, that is the reason this got executed first. So you can see the time here. So at 15:24 8 seconds this got started. After completion of this copy activity got started. So what is the input to this copy activity? See, this is the wildcard file name. Organization1.csv is the input to the copy activity in the first iteration. In the second iteration, you can see organization.csv. This is the second file. So this is the input in the second iteration. Okay. So now to verify our output, we should open that Azure Data Lake storage and come to containers. So basically initially we did not create any containers. So the sync container has been created on fly. So whenever this pipeline is running, this container got created. So inside the sync container, since it's an Azure Data Lake storage, we have created another sub container. So based upon your use case, you can create. I have just created this sub container to just show you that you will be able to create sub containers in the Azure Data Lake storage. So here inside the sub container, you are having these two files. You have successfully copied the data from the blob storage. So here in the source container, you are having the two files. Now in the destination container, which is the Azure Data Lake storage, you are having these two files. Okay. Is it clear, everyone? Any
Uh,
doubts?
yeah, one quick question in this. How do you are you're uploading the data to the blob storage manually? How does it come in the real time scenarios or something?
So in the real time, there'll be some partial scripts running, or there'll be any other sources which will be sending the data to the blob storage. So those all will be done through PowerShell scripting or any other language.
Or how does it say, suppose if you have a integrated application, how do you configure the Azure to the integrated application and send the data across?
Basically, it depends upon the application. So if in case you are, so it depends upon the technology you use. In Python, you have some libraries using which you can send the data to the Azure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are we seeing those sort of scenarios, or is it
No, no, we won't be seeing all those
only?
scenarios. Like we won't just you will be. We will be seeing uh, how to get the data from a REST API. But so we can't create an application which sends the data and all those things, no?
Okay. And now you have data in the sense you have the files in the blob storage.
Yeah.
what, those files, right? What is the contents of those files, and how is the files related to each other or something? Do
So,
we see
those are just the data sets. Just an example
those?
data sets created. I'll show you. So once you click here, you can edit. You can click on edit. There you can see. See. You can also see if you want to see the preview of the files. So here you won't get in this, but
Uh, let's take a scenario. Instead of copy function, can we use
yeah.
the read data and dump
What?
it into the? Can we do the read function instead of copy function between the blob storage to the storage account? Can we read the data and dump it into the storage account? In the file, I may be having 10 columns. Out of the 10 columns, I will be requiring only
Yeah,
five.
so yeah. In that cases, you will be using another activity called as a lookup activity. So if at all your use case is to get only few data, that is, if you are having 10 columns and you only require only subset of that data, you will be using some other activity which is called as a lookup activity, which is used to read the subset of the data. So in that case, you will be using a lookup activity. Yeah, we will be covering that lookup activity in further coming classes.
And how do we see the number of columns in the spreadsheet dynamically? Say suppose if the file is coming, CSV file is coming 10 columns, and tomorrow it may be having 5 columns or something, or
Yeah, for that we will be having another option called as schema drift.
uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll be using that concept called schema drift. We'll be covering that. Yeah, so
Okay.
everything it's we are still in starting.
No, actually, this
I'm
is the
excited, but yeah,
I'm attending actually, so I don't know much what has happened. I have to go through that
hmm.
actually. I've been finding that whenever I'm the start lesson starts, I'm having the other activities which are very
Oh, yeah,
also
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah, yeah.
important.
So any other doubts, anyone? So you can explore many options present in this get metadata activity. So don't only try only the things which I've shown you. So you try and see
Uh,
whether you come across and
uh,
yeah.
yeah, this process will not update the record. Only it copy the data and keep the storage and storage part like.
What?
Okay, suppose means this process only copy the data from the source and put the data in the destination. It does not update the record.
Yeah. So for performing the see guys, we are still in the starting. Yeah, we'll
Mhm.
be covering them scenario. For performing the transformations on the data, we'll use the other activities or we'll be using the data flows to perform the transformations on the data.
Means if in a destination file we have a file one already we have, but
Hmm.
when we
Yeah.
execute
So
the
let us
loop.
execute the same. Yeah, let us execute the same pipeline again and see what happens. So we have
Yes, yes.
no that this organization, these both files are present in the destination. So we are running the pipeline again. So let's see what happens. What's gonna happen again? Your voice is breaking.
Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying in the for each loop, if condition we can give or not means for the checking the duplicate files.
You
Can
want
we
to
give
check the
the if
duplicate. Yeah, yeah.
can
For
we
that,
give
we'll be
the
having, yes. See, there is some other process to check whether a file, if it's already present in the destination or not. So for that, you'll be using this exist validation activity, which tells you whether the file exists in that or not. So
How
here you can,
how do I schedule this job itself to run by itself?
yeah, for if you want to make that process, see here we are triggering it manually. So if you want to automate that triggering process, you will be using something called as triggers.
Triggers.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be covering this. So whenever a pipeline gets triggered using those triggers, then you can monitor those things from here.
So in the scenarios, real-time scenarios, if there are two files in the folder, blob storage, right?
Hmm.
We when the trigger is happening, it is keep on doing the same two files all the time, is it? Or how do we automate this so that it is not doing the same task again and again?
See, it won't. So based upon the how will you design the trigger is, so upon arrival of few files in the blob storage. So upon arrival, so that is a what is that called? That is an event. So based upon an occurrence of that event, you should trigger this pipeline. So here if you want to automate this pipeline, so what you need the files to be present there. So once files get received in that blob storage, then trigger this pipeline. So to automate this all process, you will be using event based triggers. So what is an event here? Upon arrival of files in the blob storage is the event. So upon occurrence of this event, you should trigger this things.
If there is a files already exist, so will it consider that, or is it only the new file? It will say now you have dumped the two files in there, right? Upon arrival, if I dump another one, right, I've scheduled the trigger. Now upon arrival, will it consider all the three files or two files?
See, what happens is uh, in the real time, once after you move the data, you will archive those files. Again, you will be deleting those files using a delete activity, or you will be moving those files somewhere.
Mhm. Okay, so there is a directory structure, so the containers
Yeah.
with something. So okay, okay,
Okay,
that's
guys,
fine.
if there are no any doubts, we are good to close the session.
Where shall we contain all this in the future session?
hello?
Yeah. Any doubts? Any guys?
Voice is not.
Do we see the scenario in the future sessions that how to move?
Hello.
How to?
Hey guys, your voice is not clear.
Is it clear now? Hello, can you hear
Oh
me now?
yeah. Yes.
So in the do we see the scenario in the real time saying that okay, when the file is arriving in the folder,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. We'll be covering that scenario. Yes, that scenario will be covered during this triggers concept. So upon
Okay.
arrival of those, yeah,
Uh,
when we are creating an event-based trigger, then we'll be covering that topic there. I mean that scenario.
mhm.
So, okay, guys. Yeah. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.